Hello there. In this video, I'm just going to walk you through a slide deck. I actually prepared this internally for our team after attending HubSpot's GROW conference in Sydney last week. And I'm recording this to kind of share it in the school community and maybe on social in case it's of interest to you. This is just a collection of my thoughts based on the event and kind of what's happening in the space at the moment. It's very curated, so it's not thorough. And if you attended the event, there's going to be a lot of things that I don't cover here. I've just pulled out a few of the key thoughts, which I'll just go through with you here. I've put them into three categories about thinking big, just where HubSpot's heading. Second is what this means for marketers. And then third, of course, AI. It's wall-to-wall AI in just about every event these days. HubSpots are no different. So we're going to look at that, and I'm just going to give you my opinions. This is not endorsed or, this is not a summary that's HubSpot has provided that I'm talking about. These are just the things that occurred to me. So when I refer to some of the presentations I saw, I'm just going to pick out one or two things, even though some of them went on for 45 minutes or more. Now, the first is really about thinking big, and I've put here there's only two number ones. And what I mean by that is that HubSpot is talking about where they're going. There's no confusion in my mind, or for most people in the audience, I think, even though they kind of try and confuse us. This first line, the number one AI-powered CRM for scaling companies, I think that's kind of a summary of what they talk about as their mission, which is a bit of a nothing statement. AI-powered, look, that's going to be everything. It's kind of like saying the number one spell check-enabled CRM. That's what AI-powered is going to mean for most of us in the coming years. And of course, scaling companies, that could be anything. So it's a bit of a nothing statement. I'll tell you what I think they're saying. They're basically saying it's a Salesforce and HubSpot world. They don't say that themselves, but that's what I'm hearing. There's only room for a few big CRMs, and HubSpot has their sights set firmly on being one of those two. They currently have 250,000 customers globally. I think they want to double that maybe in the next couple of years. Like, this is big goals. This is not just, we're happy with steady growth. So that's exciting to hear. I think it's obvious that I say this if you're watching this, but I think it's just worth highlighting and reminding us that they've got big goals. And so what does that mean for us as a partner? What does that mean for you if you're a HubSpot user in your company, whether that's large or small? I think, though, it's worth highlighting, this is a bit of marketing 101 really, which is that the majority of the value in a market is really taken up by 1, 2, 3, 4, just a few players, and then everyone else fights for the scraps. So we know, there's Coke and Pepsi, and then there's everyone else in terms of soft drinks. There's McDonald's and burgering, then there's everyone else in terms of burger chains. There's the big four accountants, then there's everyone else. There might be 5 now, or I don't know. There's only a few social networks, then there's everyone else. Operating systems, there's Windows, Mac, there's a few others, Linux, a whole of, but they're not major. And as Yamini mentioned, these operating systems, search engines, though, you might actually say there's only one, but there's Bing and there's a few others, but really it's only a few that get the majority of everything. Look at browsers, look at phones, of course. Apple and Android, and Yamini actually highlighted this in one of her sessions, right? So the majority of the value is pulled out of that market by just a few players. Will the same happen in AI, and will the same happen in CRM? That's what we're waiting to see, but HubSpot firmly believes there's only going to be a few, maybe 2, taking the majority of the value in the CRM space, and they're definitely positioning themselves to be one of those 2. So that's a message. I don't think there's any particular insight here, but it's just worth highlighting that they talk about this firmly. HubSpot's advantage, I feel, has always been about the product team, the product itself, the consistency of the user experience. I'm going to come back to that at the end. I know they have to talk about AI, and we'll talk about AI at the end. I know they have to talk about all of this and where they're going and what they see in very competitive times, but really it's about the product. For me as a user, probably for you as well. We'll come back to that. So there can only be 2 number ones, HubSpot and Salesforce. Look, at the event, Yamini was interviewed by Mark Pesh. He was probably the best interviewer I've ever seen. Now, that might sound like big praise, but I don't go to many events. But I've seen a lot of terrible interviews in all the events I've been to. He was excellent. I thought he was so on point. He was incredibly well prepared. He shone the spotlight entirely on Yamini. He didn't try to take any spotlight on himself. He directed the flow. He was excellent. And he made Yamini look excellent. I'd seen her the previous day also getting interviewed, and she was excellent there as well. She is so impressive as a person, as a thinker on her feet. Incredible. Now, she said a lot of things. I've just pulled out 4 points here. Out of, she said a lot more, and if you were there at the event, you'll know this. But she mentioned the word pace of change many times. I think that's, again, no surprises there, but worth highlighting. This is an incredibly exciting time, but rapidly changing, perhaps quicker than any other time in technological or technology event history. Talked about disruption, of course, and just how very quickly you can be disrupted. We'll use the term overnight. I know what that means, but very quickly businesses can go out of business. We're in a technology consulting position ourselves as a business, and we are being disrupted because the work that we do, especially in the middle, there's strategy, there's implementation, and then there's kind of review and a training at the end. We're still there in strategy and the training and QC, but the whole implementation piece is totally being disrupted as people turn to ChatGPT. That's disrupting our industry. There are technology moments. And of course, there's technology always improving, but there's only a few moments in time that come along like this. So 2025 is one of those times, one of those years. The big thing, though, that I feel that Yamini impressed upon me is that with all of these moments of change and disruption going on, HubSpot is walking the talk. So they do talk about AI a lot and the importance of it, and they're just putting it all throughout their platform. Some of it's good, some of it's not, in my opinion, but it's there. And they internally, I know their teams and their processes are very much focused on AI for productivity, efficiency, acceleration, all of that kind of thing. So they're walking the talk, which is good to see because we all know those companies that give the vision video and talk about the future but never deliver. And you might have seen some of that lately from other big global companies. All right, let's move on. The second topic I want to talk about is marketing has changed. I've put LOL here, a bit of a lull, because I don't know why this is a surprise to people, but it was talked about as though it's a surprise. And I'll give some comments on it. Really, the CMO role is changing. That seems to be a surprise to many people. But let's talk about what that means. And really, if you had a Venn diagram where you talked about a CMO, and then on the other side you talked about a CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, RevOps, all that kind of thing, really the intersection is becoming large between those two roles, as we see as CMOs having an increasingly larger view of revenue and not only marketing leads, but deals and sales being part of their purview. So for small businesses, I don't think this is any surprise. If you're a small business owner, that's called common sense. You basically want to follow everything. How do we get the leads? Are they converting? Are we getting deals? Is that turning into revenue? That's actually just what a good small business owner does. Also, if you're in B2C, especially e-commerce, that's kind of normal for marketing teams to do that. But when you're in B2B, and especially as you move into enterprise, you see these kind of focus areas silo off, and that's common sense as well. You have a marketing focus just on getting leads, hand to sales, and you kind of lose touch. Sales takes them, and we have this. HubSpot's tried to put the term schmarketing, I think, maybe a decade ago. And we always talk about this handover between sales and marketing. But all that really highlights is, they are separate. And now I think pace of change, technology, all those kind of things, do more with less, and whatever cliche you want to use. The CMO role is encompassing revenue more and more. Now, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. Of course they should be. However, my takeaway from the event and seeing some of the interviews and panels that were talking about these kind of things is that that's a bit of a shock in B2B. And it's a bit of a learning for CMOs and larger companies that they need to be doing that. So if you're a CMO and that hasn't been part of your thinking, then maybe this is a good reminder. For those of us who run small businesses, it's kind of surprising that would be new. All right, moving on to content. Well, of course, SEO is still important, but GEO or generative engine optimization, I think that's the term people are using. It's very important, and that's basically how do you appear in the AI overviews. And this is part of marketing is changing because every marketer that I speak with wants to know. Well, that's what they're concerned about. And so if you see this screenshot here on the right, that's the AI overview in Google there. Of course, people are going to spend more time in the AI overview than going right down to the bottom to click a link. That's natural behavior. And so marketers are like, well, how can we appear there? Now, this is a good example of where it's still relevant because this is pretty much a navigational search. How do I find the companies? Kind of gives me the results. But when you go to other searches about how to do things, you get the AI overview, answers your question. You're not even going to click through. So marketers are naturally worried traffic is dropping, all that kind of thing. Now, this tour, my slides here, is not really to go into the answer to that. It's just really to highlight that the role of marketers when it comes to content, SEO, and all that kind of thing is changing. Again, I don't think there's any real surprises for people that are on top of this, but it is good to be reminded, and especially for us as a HubSpot partner, and maybe for you in your role, it's thinking about what if that's the conversation that is coming up with your clients or your internal stakeholders, then do you have an answer for it? What are you doing about it? And you might have seen recent news articles, maybe the CEO of Cloudflare, Matthew Prince, talking about how they are seeing, and they can put the data behind it, the drop in click-throughs to websites is dramatically less. And especially for publishers, news publishers, and all of those kinds of businesses that rely on traffic, it's very tough. And so, of course, we as solution or service providers also miss those clicks. Moving on, really it's around trust. This is the big thing, especially when AI has entered the mix around content and is just generating slop at scale. How do you stand out and not just be another slop provider? So part of that is around curating what matters. A part, I guess, of AI has scaled slop, which is just about creating more. Curation is about creating less, just pulling out the important things for clients. Personal brands are important because trust. I think this is pretty well documented now. Who do you trust? Do you trust a brand or do you trust a person? Personal brands are increasing. That's why we're seeing CEOs more prevalent with their own personal sites, their own LinkedIn profiles that then reflect back onto their business brands. Awareness campaigns are becoming increasingly important, just getting that mind share out there. What was interesting, I felt, in the sessions at GROW is that HubSpot is unashamedly talking to the bigger end of town. All the sessions are talking about CMOs and people with big budgets and marketing teams and what they can do. I was actually in one session, I kind of had to smile to myself because a question was asked, how do you work out which channel is the best for your brand? And the answer from stage was, well, you spend a lot of time and money in all the different social channels, measure and collate. And I'm like, small businesses don't have the budgets for that. Apparently bigger businesses do. And that was the answer. So be very mindful of that. There is very much a top end of town mentality, and HubSpot is gunning for those customers, so no surprise there. But if you're in the audience and you're not at that scale, you need to think creatively about what that means for you. I think this last point, YouTube, is a comforting answer to that because YouTube favors the smaller businesses that can provide value, and often it's the smaller players and the personal brands that can really win on YouTube. YouTube is increasingly appearing in AI results. It's appearing actually in organic results as well. And of course, YouTube, as the saying goes, it's the second biggest search engine in the world. People go to YouTube to start their searches and find out information. So for us and for all our clients, large or small, YouTube is really the channel to definitely experiment with. Won't work for everyone, but double down on if it does. So for us, that's a very key part of where we're going this year and next. And it's not only about being found, but it's also about being trusted. So that will depend on the format you use. I know there's a lot of AI-generated deepfakes and things like that, but as you provide video, the barrier to entry is much higher than just generating all that slop that people pump out in useless websites and useless LinkedIn updates. All right, moving on. Let's chat about AI. You can't avoid it. It was wall-to-wall AI focus at the conference and, of course, across their messaging in general. What they did a good job of, I feel, is highlighting the difference between hype and reality. This is for business use, right? I'm talking about personal use is different because everyone's playing with, well, AI. The fact that we go to ChatGPT for all our answers and everyone uses AI overviews means that personally, when we're doing just our personal day-to-day processes, everyone's using AI. I don't think there's any debate about that. Everyone's using AI personally just for what they do, but it's really just searches, prompts, saving time, not using Google as much. Here we're talking about, well, what about in business use, business processes, okay? And I think they did a good job of highlighting some of the hype. There's a real fear of missing out from businesses and business leaders. There's a real focus on productivity and replacing people. They don't often say, oh, we just want to replace you. They'll talk about it in other ways and then perhaps use a work from office mandate to get rid of people. More on that in a separate discussion. They really want to accelerate, and there's a lot of hype around agents. We'll talk about agents next because it's a confusing term in many respects. But what's the reality? Well, it's not a fear of missing out, it's a fear of losing out for many users. If I embrace AI in my role to replace some of the stuff I do, does that actually mean I'm replacing myself? I think that's a very reasonable concern that people have within business, whether it's small or large business. And adapting to that and making sure that you're moving your skill set up to something that isn't easily replaceable, higher value, is important. That's easy for me to say. There wasn't much talk actually at the conference or any of the sessions about what that actually looks like, the rubber on the road. People talk about these concepts, and I think we can agree with them conceptually, but what does that mean? It does mean that people are still experimenting a lot. So for all the hype you have around what AI can achieve and all the marketing guff we see out there, and of course all the billions and perhaps trillions of dollars being pumped into the whole AI machine, the reality is people are still experimenting in their work, and many workplaces that talk about AI a lot really have not actually embedded it in their processes. Often that's because it's underwhelming, and I'm going to talk about a few scenarios in a minute where AI is perfectly suited and yet it's underwhelming. Customer support, if you've ever got an AI generated customer support reply and it's tried to be helpful but hasn't been, in fact it's wasted your time, then you'll find it underwhelming. And this is what we see in business. They go, oh yeah, we've reduced a number of support people needed for answering tickets by half, providing AI generated responses that solve the ticket. No, they don't. I don't know how you'd measure this, but I know personally, anecdotally, from the support I've got with AI-generated customer support, it's often crap. And so I leave in frustration and find the solution elsewhere. I'm sure internally that company has ticked that off as a big win for success. It's often exhausting in that regard as well. So if you've generated guff, you know how you can just take 3 points, turn it into an email, the old adage goes, send that and someone else gets that guff and uses something to summarize it. That's exhausting. On one side it's productive, but actually it's exhausting. If you've seen some of my other videos talking about how Manus can be used to create reports, you'll know that it creates extensive 40 and 50 page PDF reports which are just noise for some poor person that has to read them. The other thing is, the reality is people are still using very simple prompts, even though we know this idea of prompt engineering and completeness and having context and the role and all this kind of thing is important. Most people are just not doing that. So that's the hype versus reality. Let's just chat about some scenarios and avoiding slop, shall we? So if I think about HubSpot, for example, they've got Content Remix. I just think that's a slop machine. And you'll often see on YouTube videos about how people have automated their content process. And what they tend to automate is ideation and providing answers. And no one has thought about what's the good question to ask and answer. So that's why we refer to it as slop. HubSpot has a prospecting agent. I think it has promise, but at the moment it's just personalized slop machine. It creates these outreach emails that you kind of check. Some are hit and miss, some are good, some are bad. And of course, you've probably been on the receiving end, not only of some from HubSpot, but there's a whole bunch of other tools out there claiming to be this automated SDR process. We can see where they want to get to, but it's not there yet. And while it will replace SDR roles, I'm sure, at the moment, it's a bad experience for everyone. And in some ways, I feel that the success stories for those are no different to those Nigerian prince scams, which do have success for the right kind of people. Otherwise, they wouldn't continue doing them. These prospecting agents churning out this slop do have some success. Sometimes you just hit the right person at the right time with the right problem statement, you get a win, and then people chalk that up as an AI SDR agent being a good thing. Well, I think you can tell my thoughts on that. However, let's talk about the customer service agent, because I think this really does have real potential. HubSpot does as well. They've highlighted it many times in their talks, and no different at Grow. I'm not going to go into the details of it in this presentation. There'll be other videos that talk about it, but I will say this, and that's that it's the perfect case for a LLM to think around sentiment. When a ticket comes in, you should be able to check sentiment, not only of that ticket, but also other tickets from this person or from people talking to this company, e.g. that's you, and maybe able to look over those 10, 20 tickets over the last couple of days or weeks. What's the overall sentiment? Because if sentiment is frustration, then that needs to be escalated quickly. That's a perfect use case for customer agent. I think at the moment we're still trying to just get rid of service people, service agents, replace them with AI. I don't think it's there yet. I think it will in time, because given enough knowledge and your knowledge base about answering all those common questions, of course that should be possible. Again, that's just around fine tuning. But that's where I see the scenarios. Now, there's no doubt that in time all of these will get better. So these aren't going to stop, but just be mindful of believing all the hype around some of these tools. Let's chat about agents, because this is an interesting one. You'll hear the term come up a lot. What is it? And you'll ask 10 people what an AI agent is, and you get 10 different answers. Especially if you ask someone technical versus someone that's an end user. Ask a developer what an agent is, you'll get all kinds of talk about autonomous this and self-directed and all of this. Ask a marketer or just a user, and really the answers will be mixed. They'll be like, oh, well, I just want it to do this discrete boxed process. So it's not my job to tell you what an agent is, because it's changing. But here's some of the things I will say. It's really just, let's package up a kind of piece of work to be done. And whether that's called manually and even checked manually, I don't think it really matters in my mind. It's whether that boxed up process has been a lot more efficient, saved me time, and got me a better result, okay? I know some people disagree with that definition, but I'm just really about the outcome. It can extend to other platforms. That's a key part of it. So you're calling out to other platforms from your platform, or other platforms are calling you. That all sounds great, but there's the whole house of cards risk here. And I've seen this recently in a few examples where there's an agent calling out to Claude or some other AI platform, and the API key gets lost or changed or moved, and suddenly a whole process falls over, and troubleshooting that can be problematic. The promise of the agent calling out and just taking care of it all just falls over, and some poor person in the marketing team needs to work out why. So there's pros and cons. I think that'll get better over time, but just be mindful. It's not a solution without its own risks. As I said, the definition of agent has changed, and HubSpot's own agent definition is confusing. Prospecting agent. Well, it just prepares some stuff. You need to check every single one of those emails before it goes out. So that's not autonomous in my mind, but you get the idea. All right, workspaces. I think this is a big part of HubSpot that we want to double down on. It's really personalization of features. So HubSpot has a whole bunch of tools, features, whatever you want to call them. Workspaces are really a place where they're personalized for that user. I think that's a good thing. It's a good approach. There's going to be more of it. It's intentional. You, as a user, just focus on your relevant tools. You don't get lost in a malaise of menu options. And also it means that the AI context can be tailored for you over time. We're not seeing much of that yet, but that's really where it's coming. So in HubSpot, you've kind of got sales, service, and marketing workspaces. They're called different things. I think sales workspace is the main one. At the moment, they've been putting a lot of attention to service. You've kind of got the customer success workspace. I think that's what it's called now. And marketing, I think they got rid of it. I saw a beta. I don't know where it's at, but there was a marketing home feature. I think it's gone now. I need to stay on top of that more. But really, that's about personalizing what's appropriate for you to work on now. So as platforms get bigger and more complex and more advanced, We're trying to provide an interface which makes it focused, personalized, just for what we want to do. I think that's an excellent approach. I think it's a differentiator. I don't see that in too many other products. HubSpot, I feel, is doing this particularly well. Okay, so what's our response to all of this? Where do we go? Here's a few things. What if you're a small business? Because there were a number of small businesses sitting in the audiences there in sessions at Grow. And I really felt for them because I think it's pretty important that you realize HubSpot is targeting a market that might not be your market, might not be you. So don't assume that HubSpot's processes work for us or for our clients. And if you're watching this, hopefully you'll assume that as well. Don't assume HubSpot's go-to-market will work for us or our clients as well. HubSpot is out there doing massive things. For example, putting wrappers on trains and buses and all kinds of awareness advertising, which is just not at all an option for smaller businesses. And don't assume HubSpot's mission is our mission. So they are on a very large growth trajectory. They have their sights set high. Do most businesses have that? Maybe, maybe not. Growth isn't everything. I know there's that expression, if you're not growing, you're dying. And of course there is that. Entropy is part of the world we live in, no denying that. But some businesses are lifestyle businesses, others are different tracks. And also, don't be like every other partner. It's easy to come away from these events thinking, oh, here's the plan, here's what I need to be. And it turns out, oh, that's what everyone else thinks as well. And so I like to say, you might say, what are these silly images on the right-hand side here? Often it's combining things, taking things that exist, but putting your own twist on it. And the jumbo donut, I mean, the donut has been around for how long? But jumbo donut, there's a differentiation. So what's your equivalent? Ice cream's been around for ages, and cookie dough's been around for ages, and let's combine it with chocolate chip and make an ice cream. It's like, okay, there's something new. So I think for businesses and partners, it's not about trying to be on this huge growth mission. It's being about how we very specifically taking elements and providing something unique, valuable, unique in the market. But on the flip side, HubSpot is providing us with an incredible opportunity, and this is the year to really embrace it. There's customer talking points that they are out there putting and seeding into our customers and your leadership's minds. So we can ride the wave of that, learn from their focus areas, AI, hubs, agents, workspaces, all that kind of thing. So we should be talking about that. We definitely don't want customers asking us about it and then we're on the back foot. We should be, with HubSpot, talking about those things. And if you're a marketing manager or a salesperson or wherever you are, you need to be aware of this so that you can talk about that if leadership also asks. And I think really the thing is, of course, there's so much out there and it's going to be more and more, that content shock, content overwhelm. Our jobs is to curate the key benefits, just these items that are most important for us and for our clients. I think HubSpot put out 200 new releases in the last month or two. There's no way that most people can be on top of that. And so part of our job is to curate that and just guide them with the things that are specifically beneficial for them. Avoid all the guff. However, my final point here that I'm coming to, what is HubSpot's main advantage? And I feel, and I alluded to this earlier, it is their product, the product team. So you've got the product team doing stuff, and then you've got all the marketing teams and, guff in the market. In some ways, be mindful of it, got to be aware of it, but just try and avoid it. Because the real advantage of HubSpot is the product experience. I think here is a product team that, for years, decades perhaps, they've talked about the fact that HubSpot builds a consistent interface. So even when they acquire other companies, you never get this sense that it's bolted on. I think there's been Clearbit and a few others recently they've acquired, and they've done an excellent job of incorporating that into the HubSpot product. You wouldn't know that it's been acquired. You just think it's been built. There are very few companies that do that, and I know out in the industry, that's often a point of differentiation. We've just got to double down on that. It's such a beautiful product suite, set of hubs, consistent. That is the advantage. And for you using it, and for us maybe helping clients and working with clients that have HubSpot, that is really the thing to focus on. be aware of all the AI guff talk and all that kind of stuff, but really, how do we get people using the product efficiently across hubs compared to other tools where they have to have almost separate training once they go into another area of the platform? HubSpot's product team, I really think it's, well, not unique. All the best companies have this, but very few companies are the best. And HubSpot really is at the top of the game here. They provide and roll out very high quality updates. It's very rare I get any update, even if it's an early beta from HubSpot, where there's bugs. Sure, there are bugs and there's things. Of course there are. But the quality is so high and the velocity that they're pushing stuff out is so high as well. There is a machine here, a product team and a product methodology that is excellent. And so what we've got is foundations of a CRM that are firm and structures that are strong. You can build on HubSpot and be confident. It's such a good product. And by comparison, the HubSpot marketing teams just, it's busy work for us to keep up in many ways and try and navigate all this. We have to, because that's what our clients are hearing. But just be curators. And of course, the other thing which we always complain about in the partner ecosystem is selling stuff to clients that our clients don't need. HubSpot's reps are always out there sniffing for a new deal, and we've got to be very careful. We work for our clients. We don't work for HubSpot. We love HubSpot, but we sell it to our clients when it's a good fit. And the frustration that we have when sales teams at HubSpot try and sell stuff that we don't think is a fit for clients. Now, part of it is sometimes there could be more we're selling. We're not really scratching the problem enough. I totally get that, and I want to learn from HubSpot's sales teams around that. But then on the other hand, there's times when they sell stuff that we don't need. And we all remember years ago when business units came out, it's almost like there was a mandate internally to sell business units. We turn up at client sites like, why you got 3 business units? I don't know, sales said I needed it. You don't need it. So hopefully those days are not as prevalent now, but you just got to be wary of it. The product's so strong. Such a foundation and a platform to build on. Just be mindful of curating the guff that comes. All right, so I'm going to wind up, but as I do for all our internal calls, and this is for my team, but if you're watching this, you might find this useful. Our core values, it's really about efficiency and effectiveness. That's what we provide for our clients, and that's what we need to do internally always. You might think that's obvious. It's not in many companies, and we've all been in companies or seen agencies where they have multiple layers of account managers and processes that create friction and noise and busy work. Many of our clients like working with us because we respond almost within the hour on any question, and then we just hear so many stories about how other agencies and partners take weeks to respond. It's like, how can that be? It's because they don't focus on efficiency and effectiveness. We're also honest. Why would I highlight the need to be honest and have integrity? Just because I know for many people they might have been fired for making a mistake or reprimanded for making a mistake. We embrace mistakes here as long as we learn from them. I've never once fired anyone for making a mistake. I've fired, unfortunately, a number of people over the years for being dishonest. And so I just want to remind you of that. And that's something that our clients appreciate as well. And within Zen, we know we've lost a few clients for being honest when we made a mistake, and fair enough, they fired us, but that's been fortunately very rare. And personal growth, you need to learn. You can't rely on me to kind of direct what you should be learning. You need to have the initiative to be out there being curious and making an impact. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.